I won't ever give you a 2 3/4 star for anything.
That's why you're back, Paul. That's why you're here. Hello, welcome back everybody. My name is Phil Marriott and we are talking movies with our boy on film, Paul Joseph.
Hello.
So let's talk about Almodóvar. Pedro Almodovar. I'm guessing you're a fan. In fact, we have talked about this already, so yes, you are a fan. But what are your favourite films of his?
I think my favourite film of his is probably All About My Mother, or Todo sobre mi madre, as it's in its native language.
Got to be authentic. We were talking about this at the screening because you were saying that some people, when they talk about Almodóvar movies, they do actually go into the Spanish.
It stems from, I was talking about because I was at uni, I did English literature and drama, and we had people doing the drama course who also were doing French, Spanish or German, and it always used to make me laugh that you'd be in like a theatre class and you're talking about playwrights and things, and the people who did Spanish, they couldn't just say Lorca, they always had to go Lorca. If they were doing German, they instead of saying Brecht, they just go Brecht, and it's like, yeah, all right, we know you speak. So this has evolved to, with my husband Tim, I always joke around because I speak Spanish. Well, I speak to an extent. I've learned Spanish, and he has a little bit now, but he does speak a little bit now, but historically he didn't. And so I would always joke that I didn't recognise the film unless it was said in the Spanish title. So he would say, oh yeah, I really like Talk to Her, and I'd be like, sorry, what's that? What? He's like, you mean Todo sobre mi madre? So yeah,
yeah, it's like yes. You're not a proper Almodóvar fan unless you speak Spanish when you're talking about his movies.
Yeah.
I can't believe this is his 22nd feature film. The mind just boggles. It's like, how did I not realise he'd actually done so many films? I have got a couple of favourites. One of mine is Giulietta. Love that. I know that's quite a recent one in terms of, his back catalogue of movies, but also I'm so excited. And this is another thing we talked about as well, because his movies in tone, the tonality of his films, they do change quite often.
Yeah.
Sometimes you've got this like kind of really over the top kind of camp movie, and then you've got the really, reflective serious drama, which is quite melancholic.
I had a phase where when I first got into him, I watched all the films, and actually it's only probably weirdly the one I haven't seen is his last one, Pain and Glory.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. And
I think it's right. I think some of the early ones are very anarchic, but then they also have elements of real tragedy and warmth within that. And similarly, some of the more tragic ones, or the biggest stories, so like Todo sobre mi madre, have these kind of like farcically camp elements. If you think about All About My Mother, you've got the trans character who is just ridiculous and really silly and very, very camp, but you've got this against this backdrop of like death and grieving and all these other things, and I think he does that very well. I know you just said it's one of your favourite, but I think I'm So Excited was a little bit too of the one type, a little bit too of the silliness, and not really much other content. But it was really good fun. But you're never gonna see a film of his and consider it to be boring. There's always so much happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was the intention as well, because it seems so far off the scale in ridiculousness that's why I rolled with it more, because I just thought at the beginning, okay, we're going to go there. Parallel Mothers is the name of the new film. This is, again, quite a serious film, quite thought-provoking film, I think, in many ways, because I think, there are obviously people that have gone through a similar experience. It's about two single women. They're meeting in a hospital room. They've just given birth. Penelope Cruz actually looking still quite glamorous when she's giving birth, although she's really going through the emotions there, lots of pain. But she plays Janis, and we've got Milena Smit, who plays Anna. Anna's very young. Penelope Cruz, I'm guessing, I don't know, late 40s, early 50s. Don't know how old she is, but she still looks great.
She looks amazing. Volver obviously is her kind of calling card. Big. I think was she nominated for an Oscar for that?
I think she was, yeah. And I think she won an award with this new movie as well.
Yeah, but with Volver, like the characters, Raimunda is this character who's very voluptuous, and she has this push-up bra, and and it's all part of that look, and she has the sort of the hair kind of almost like a sort of like a flamenco dancer kind of there, and big ear, and in this she's much more. Her look is a lot more plain and kind of like earthy, I'd say. But yeah, she still looks great. She's beautiful, and she, and also still very stylish. We might talk about that in a bit, because you were talking when we saw it about the style of the apartment and all these kind of things.
I know. I always get totally drawn in by the set design of Almodóvar movies, because I'm always looking at like the decor and the paintwork, and because they're always really polished, neat trendy looking places, always looking at the crockery, what they're using, and which is ridiculous because that's just like attention to detail that I get a little bit distracted by that. But the performances in his films are always terrific. I mean, these are proper heavyweight actors that he has in his films, and no surprise with Penelope Cruz in this film as well. She's terrific in this. Right. But again, less comedic, this film, certainly. More reflective, storyline-wise.
I imagine the film, I mean, I know it's already, I think it premiered, was it maybe Cannes or Venice or somewhere?
Venice, yeah.
And I think it's won awards already, but I think it's going to do incredibly well critically. It would be patronising to say there's a maturity to this, because there is to a lot of his other work. What initially is, I guess, a sort of framing narrative, but then kind of moves to the fore, is the backdrop of the lead character is doing some research into trying to exhume, uncover and find the graves of ancestors who were killed during the Spanish Civil War. There's actually a big project about doing that and kind of remembering and making sure that happens, and who it's left to when funding runs out and that kind of stuff. And that's actually a very, very serious issue. And I don't want to give too much away, but it's almost like, because that's such a somber issue and it's handled so well, I think he's made the intention to tone down a lot of the campery, even though the main story of the women and the hospital and the babies and then what happens to them is high drama. You're expecting a few more moments of witty asides and kind of campery and those kind of things that often happen in his films that just isn't there. And at some points I was feeling like I missed that. But then when you get to the end of the film and see it as a whole, it's actually really appropriate. And I think he's made a real intentional choice of that. One is his actress who he uses a lot, Rossi De Palma, who's, my husband calls Picasso face. She's got this amazing nose and kind of, she pops up, and immediately I think I chuckled just at her presence.
Yeah, you did.
Because she's always the sort of like sidekick with all the sassy lines and the kind of high drama and rolling the eyes. And even then, that character doesn't fulfill that in the same way. She has a certain level of it, but it's it's almost like he's teasing us with his tropes and then not fully rolling them out, because he's wants our attention to go somewhere else. I think it's a masterful choice, and I think it's all intentional, and I really hope that people who are fans of his style get it. And I certainly did, and it definitely stayed with me for a long time, the film. I really thought about it a lot afterwards.
Absolutely. It's a really clever thing, I think, to balance a little bit of comedy with such a serious subject. But you're right about that character, though. She was brilliant, because I loved her bright red lipstick and the big dangly earrings. She had that great, fashion sense was quite over the top as well. The heavy mascara. She was great. But you're right about that storyline, centering around the graves, because that is obviously teased right from the offset, because we get that right from the very beginning. And of course, I suppose that does complement the storyline with the actual baby story too, because we've got two very different women. We've got Penelope Cruz's character, who's Janis. She's middle-aged, but obviously not regretting having the baby. But then we've got, on the flip side of that, the younger character, Anna, who, is quite scared of being in that situation.
Anna's mum is an actress, isn't she? And she's got a bit like one of those Almodóvar sort of stock characters, but again, not quite there.
Very career driven.
It is interesting because obviously it is about, the parallel mothers, or madres paralelas, is, about kind of motherhood and I guess carrying on generations and family and that. And then of course the framing narrative is about the responsibility of honouring your antecedents, and how actually, despite years and years and years and generations and decades, that pain can still be there, and who's left to carry it. There's some beautiful sequences at the end when she's back in the village where this all happened, back in her home village, and visiting other women who are granddaughters, great granddaughters of people at the time. And it's this sort of like majority of like older women who are carrying the flame for this thing that happened and needs to be remembered. So like a lot of his other films, it's really about, it again has that strength of womanhood and mothers and and daughters, and that appears in lots of his films. I mean, in Voltaire, there's like the grandma who's always wanted to go back to the village, and there's they go back to the and upkeep the graves and all these sorts of things, and it is done so beautifully in this. Like it really is. And I kind of think, obviously it will have a different resonance for people who are Spanish. It's a story specific to Spain, and I would imagine it'd be nice to talk to some Spanish people about how they think about that, because it's obviously a massive thing for that nation, and part of that nation's kind of reconciliation with its past. But again, within that, we get this juicy, dramatic plot between the two women and stuff that happens, and their relationship as friends and anything else, and people that are in their lives and other things that happen, and some massively tragic incidents that happen within that story as well.
But it also shows you how people of different generations can be, and things that matter to one person but not necessarily the other. And that doesn't mean to say that, you know, young people are always carefree, because obviously Anna's quite scared about having this baby, but also on the flip side of that, we've got, you know, the naivety, because she can't even peel potatoes. There's a scene where Janis is, you know, telling her how to peel a potato. Yeah,
and, you know, explicitly talks to her about the importance of remembering these things and this kind of thing she's involved in. And I mean, what's quite nice is that there's an element that drives the plot about how she becomes pregnant in the first place is very much involved in her journey to try and get this thing in her home village sorted out, in terms of people she meets while she's trying to get that done. Again, it's just got that warmth. The characters are really flawed, but treated in a really humane way. And, you know, it's also that thing about people facing terrible choices or terrible things happening to them, and sometimes it's not about doing the right or wrong thing. It's just you just do something, and why would you ever be criticized if that happens to be the wrong thing, or not right at the time, or not right on reflection?
I think also it's about, you know, us realizing that we've made mistakes, and sometimes it's too late to go back on that and correct them. But also, you know, as you grow older, you do, with experience, you do learn, you know, that some things are better nipped in the bud, as it were. But I don't know about you, but I just think Almodóvar is such a great storyteller. I'm always captivated by his stories and the characters, obviously, that he's using, but the performances obviously play a big part in that. He always picks the best actors for those roles.
Definitely. Interestingly, and I guess this is partly of him, being a gay man, and he's always talked about his love of camp and kind of, you know, old movie stars and Bette Davis, all those sorts of people. And I definitely prefer his films where he's dealing with female protagonists rather than male ones. If I think about Bad Education, Mala Educación, or Broken Embraces, Abraços Rotos, where there's male leads, it doesn't seem to quite have the same resonance. Having said that, I haven't seen Pain and Glory.
No, well, I was just going to say, you need to see that, because
amazing.
I think he does bring out Antonio Banderas' character like brilliantly, and also he, you know, you realise that he's quite flawed as a character as well. And I think that's why we resonate with these characters in these stories, because they feel very real, and it's like maybe experiences that a lot of us have gone through. And, you know, I think there's always something in a film, whether it's, you know, I mean, yes, it's a different culture, maybe being in Spain, different country, but to us, but I think there's always elements of those stories and those characters that we can click with.
There's no sign of it slipping, you know, as he's getting into being an older filmmaker. It's kind of like top of the game. And I kind of think, you know, for me, there's a handful of those sort of directors who, when they make a film, it's typically them. It doesn't look like it could be made by anyone else, but the artistry isn't so indulgent to be off-putting. I mean, I think Quentin Tarantino's a bit like that as well, in that, like, his films, so much goes into them, but it's not distracting. A lot of people would try and copy Almodóvar or copy someone like Tarantino and do it badly. I like directors who make bold storytelling choices, and there is lots of artistry, but it's not just art house films for the sake of it. And I think some particular directors can get a bit overindulgent in some of that stuff, whereas, you know, you never get a sense with Almodóvar that the story or the characters being sacrificed for the kind of stuff that's going on around it, and the kind of trimmings and the dressing up of it. It all just knits together really well.
But yeah, I thought it was great. I really enjoyed it, and I thought the story was really interesting for so many reasons. And yeah, I'm going to go for 4 stars.
I think I'd give it 5.
Wow.
I don't think I could find anything wrong with it, and you think about it a lot afterwards. I mean, when we saw Annette, that similar, you know, certain things do stay with you, and maybe it's the experience of when you're watching it, and, you know, just the moment it strikes you. But I think with this one, it is just beautifully done.
I think the only reason why I've given it 4 is not because I don't think it's a perfect film. It's just that I've preferred some of his other films to this. Yeah. But that's not to say it's a bad movie. I thought it was great.
Yeah. No, 4 stars is generally very good, isn't it?
That's not such a bad score, is it, right?
No, it's like 8 out of 10. It's kind of like, and also you don't want to be too indulgent in tossing out five-star reviews.
I know, Sean Vickers says exactly the same as he's on quite a hard marker. I don't want to give 5 to everybody.
I always think it's always the dreaded 3-star. That's always a bit like, ooh.
That's a bit meh, isn't it? It's quite meh.
And actually, again, I think when it's only, it's a difference in sometimes if you could have a 7 out of 10 rather than a 3 out of 5, which is equivalent to 6 out of 10. Get me doing my maths. That's just a bit better because quite often when you look at things, 1 is bad, 2 is okay, 3 is good, 4 is very good, 5 is outstanding. So 3, maybe we need to do justice for 3-star movies. Often, that does, you look at the star rating, if you're 3, you're a bit like,
I'm a bit picky about halves, though. It has to be bang on. Like, it's got to be either a 3, 4 or 5. I know Raj has slipped in a couple of halves before, and I'm like, there's something annoying about that.
Stick to the rules. It's like this time of year when everyone's like, oh, what's your top 10 singles of the year? And everyone's like, oh, I've chosen 11. It's like, shut up, choose 10. Like,
People talk about a top 10 and they talk about 36. It's like, that's not
like,
in the 10.
They're like, oh, joint first place, there's 57 of them. And it's like, no, stick to the rules. I won't ever give you a 2 3/4 star for anything.
That's why you're back, Paul. That's why you're here doing this. So Parallel Mothers is coming out on the 28th of January. We've actually seen it weeks before this is published.
Real treat,
Yeah, we got up front. But before we go, tell us about Athena, because I was so pleased to be playing there at Eagle in London for the first night open that they've not been open for a couple of years.
This is 4th of December. Athena, the 80s night I run, had its return to the Eagle in London a week after the venue opened, after being closed for nearly a year, because at the Eagle they closed for the last lockdown in December and then had a flood in, I think, February, March time, which caused extensive damage. So the venue's only just reopened after renovation. So yes, we had Athena returned for the first full dance floor night since February 2020. We did do a couple of nights there, sort of September, October, November last year. That was that kind of awful sit down, eat a Scotch egg time that was just a bit like, it was fine at the time, but on reflection, we don't want to go back to that.
No.
So yeah, it was brilliant to have the venue up and running again, everyone back, and you were our guest DJ and you did a great slot, even though you stressed both me and Gareth, the other DJ, out because we were like, oh my god, he's played all the best 80s songs. What are we going to do?
I know, Tainted Love and Sweet Dreams through the mix.
Yeah, I was like, oh no, not oh my god, he's played Xanadu. Yeah, but
all the number ones.
But to be honest, I say that jokingly because there's just so much amazing music in the 80s that you can just play and play and play. So yeah, I think the government have now brought in passport restrictions for venues, which the Eagle were doing anyway, and I think that's a sensible thing to do. And hopefully that means that that's as much as they're going to kind of put on nightlife at the moment, because I think making everywhere close again would be really tough for the sector. So we'll see. But yeah, it was great. It was lovely to be back.
Well, thank you for having me back. It was an amazing night. I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to going back to the Eagle to see more and experience, not necessarily DJing, so I'm not preempting, I'm not being presumptuous, but yeah, it was great. It's great to be back. Thank you as always, Paul, for your fabulous review. Looking forward to the next one, and thank you everybody for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and tell us your favourite Almodóvar movie.
Yes, and tell us it in Spanish as well.
Tell us in Spanish. See you next time.
Bye.